morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's Action Coach NoLimits Munch and Learn. Our guest today is Paul Clegg, and he's one of the original pioneers, and as I'm sure you, if you don't know already, will get to know, is a very, very prolific contributor to our community. Good morning, Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. I've just enjoyed a couple of a nice few days and a really sunny day yesterday because I was able to go out and fly my drone for quite a while. And I was buzzed around by a buzzard who was looking at me as I was looking at him, wondering, does he think he can take me?
Oh, brilliant. I must admit, I saw a couple of those of your video clips on LinkedIn. So people, if you aren't following Paul, follow him on LinkedIn. Right, today's topic is from corporate to small business, expert tips for marketing and growth. Now, for those of you who don't know Paul Clegg, a bit of his background. He has a background in sales and marketing with experience in field sales, national sales, management, senior management, general management roles with 2 international hair and beauty companies. He also has an entrepreneurial experience through marketing consultancies and owning and later selling a B&I franchise. Currently, he divides his time between mentoring small business owners on marketing strategies and growing, as he mentioned now, a video marketing business. So in other words, people, a life dedicated to marketing. So Paul, without further ado, I mean, the topic is from corporate to small business. And I think a question on everybody's lips is what is the difference between corporate and small business marketing?
There's a massive difference. And I have to say, when I left corporate and set up my own business, probably like many people looking at this video or this interview, I didn't know there was any difference. Bearing in mind I had a background in marketing, but what I didn't realize is the people around me with different skills, different talents, different experiences made me look good. And I didn't quite cotton on to that because when I started on my own, like many people, I've got a limited amount of financial resource, I've got a limited amount of personal time resource. And the challenge of that is you tend to either spend money in the wrong way or you try and do it all yourself. And I think that was the first big thing. While I was working in corporate, I was spending other people's money and I had a lot of people to help me do that. The minute, I'll tell you the truth, on 4 o'clock on the first day, I realized I had to go and buy and stick the stamps on the letters I was sending out. And that was new to me. So it was as simple as that. I think also the big difference is that in a corporate environment, or even just a big company environment, you've already got an established process, a structure. And when you're on your own, you don't have that structure. You know, people say it's great working for yourself. You can go and do whatever you want, whenever you want. And you lose that discipline, or it's easy to lose that discipline, especially of late when people are working from home, trying to get something off the ground. You think, what is it that you need to do next? And when you work in a corporate environment, you know that your diary is laid out for you. You know certain meetings are required. There's already that structure. You've grown into that structure. So I think they're the big differences that I've found between corporate and working on my own. And it was, I think during the time I was trying to get my own business off the ground, it was a brand consultancy and I was very well connected in the industry. I was very high profile. So actually getting in front of people wasn't quite a challenge. So it was very much easy. It was easier for me to at least, you know, people knew of my reputation. And I think that's the first thing that people need to be thinking about. What is the reputation I have? And what you've done in the past is fine, but too many people lean on that, and they shouldn't be leaning on that. So that's the first thing. Over the time, through trial and error and making some real blunders, some real challenges, and I can talk to you later, and I held those on my shoulder like a heavy weight for ages, things I'd missed out and done, and I began to doubt myself. Looking back, they were gold, because I can talk to any business owner, find out, I know what questions to ask, and I can see them potentially making the same mistakes I made. And I can say, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And I suppose a consultant, they were the benefits of that. When I took on a B&I franchise, it was then that exposed me to a lot of small businesses like mine. Mid-sized businesses, small businesses, it didn't really matter. I could identify with somebody trying to get a business off the ground. I can identify with somebody trying to grow the ground from a marketing point of view. And I realized that very few knew what I knew about marketing. You see, for most people, they see marketing as an expense, a cost, and an accountant very often will confirm this, it's a cost rather than an investment. And what's the difference? Well, when you're spending money and you just spending it here, there, and everywhere, it's a cost. You spend money on electricity, you spend money on food, you don't give it a second thought. When you invest something, your time, your effort, and your money, an investment requires a return. And therefore, you must be able to measure that process. And most people don't know how to measure marketing. So very easy to drift into the thing. I'm going to build a brand. I'm going to do some brand advertising. Somebody comes along with some advertising space. Oh, I'll put a brand message in there. I'm sorry, you don't have the money or the luxury that the big businesses have. There's a big difference between brand marketing and direct marketing. Everybody needs to be questioning what they're doing and how they're going to measure that. Because when you can do that, you can take marketing as an investment. And not everything you spend money on will get a return, the return that you expect. But at least you can say, well, that didn't work. Shall I tweak this? And I'm going to show you areas in which you can tweak.
I think if I could just come in, I think that just to summarize what you said, I think the first thing is the difference between the corporate, as you said, everything is laid out for you. You've got your boss, who no matter who it is, giving you deadlines. So there's that accountability bit. And none of that happens in when you start your own business. I know it is, and I can remember that first week, and it's a bit like rabbit in the headlights. My God, and I knew that marketing was all important, and you speak about the being an investment and not a cost. Absolutely, but where do you start? It's just you touched on brand versus direct, but it's so easy that it does become a cost because you just A, don't know, and B, how do I measure it? And I think that's an incredibly important thing that you touched on. And maybe you want to elaborate a bit more on the testing and measuring of marketing.
I will do. I mean, the first people that are going to contact you are web designers. And the first thing you think you need is a website. And I provocatively will say, you're starting a business. What are you going to do? I'm going to build a website. I'm going to buy a website. I'm going to get a website made. And I say, why do you need a website? I deliberately do that. Most thoughtful web people will know, what do you want it to do? So going back to cost for a minute, and I'm going to, I'm just going to scatter this with some tips and things that people can make note of. The first thing to know is, who is your ideal customer and how much are they worth? What's the value of a customer in terms of the revenue, in terms of the profit that you get immediately? And secondly, what's the long-term value? So when you know that, and by long-term value, typically I'll say an accountant winning a new client might be £1,500 a year, but if they keep that client on average for 10 years, that client is worth 15,000. So when you know what the client is worth, first of all, hopefully you'll value them more, especially existing clients. And secondly, you'll be able to work out, even if it's only a thumb in the air, roughly how much you're prepared to spend in order to acquire that client. So those two things are very, very important. And there's 5 categories that I alluded to, 5 pillars of any marketing strategy. And I don't care whether you're working with Gillette or whether you're working with a charity or anything. If you want to get a business off the ground and grow it, there's just 5 things you need to pay attention to. And I'll guarantee that at least 2 of these elements, maybe 3, are being neglected. And that's where we are leaking business. I'll tell you what the 5 are. I'll tell you the 5 first, and then I'll go into each one.
Okay.
The first one is audience. Who is your target audience? Exactly what do they look like? You don't have to go deep into demographics unless you have got an online business, but what does that ideal client look like? What are their pains? What are their challenges? What are their fears? What are they having problems with? Because if they don't have a problem that needs solved, if they're not somewhere and they want to get somewhere else, you don't have a sale. There's no point in racing around chasing people who are not ready right now. So the audience is the first thing. Who is that audience? And how am I going to grab their attention? We live in a very noisy world. People are very easily distracted. We're getting messages all over the place. How are you going to get their undivided attention? Now, if you go out and sell to them, you may capture a few people. But if you get them to stop the scroll, as I say, and usually you can do that a little bit better with curiosity. And that's why headlines, that's why the way you get yourself in front of people is very important. There's no one size fits all. You need to know who the audience is, and you need to get them to stop them and get them to lean in to a conversation. And that's the second part, engagement. It's audience and engagement. And if you draw these things across a sheet of paper, you'll say how you'll be able to question yourself. Am I getting in front of the right audience? How am I doing that? How am I engaging them? How am I going to get them to lean in? And then the conversation's important. Why? Because people don't buy generally on the first time they see something. First of all, if it's you as a personality, they don't know you. Can they trust you? Are you competent? Will you deliver? I know they say know, like, and trust. I say respect is equally important. So rapport is very important. Engagement. And engagement, other people will call that content online. But content is not liking and sharing. It's actually producing who you are, what you bring to the party. And that's why people on NoLimits will see, I produce a lot of content and I like to be able to give advice freely or challenge people. There's different ways in which you can do it, but engagement is important because 82% of sales take place after the 7th touch. And I think when we were having a conversation with Duncan recently, he was saying that we don't know where people are in the buying process. They might be just not aware they need something, or they might be seriously researching something. But nowadays, people can research who you are and all about your business way before they even speak to you. And they'll do it on the net. And if all you've put on the net is what you do, you sound like and look like everybody else that does what you do. People are not interested in that. People are interested in what they've done after, what they get after you've done what you do. I'd like to thank Andy Bounds for that. That stuck with me. So that's.
I was going to say that's always be. What does he say? Be the afters providing person, and I love that.
Well, I'm going to cover that in the third stage. The third stage is the sale itself. So there's two things here, and I think during the engagement, it means that when you meet somebody, when somebody visits your website, how am I going to get them to come back? We were talking about that a little bit earlier, Karen, about how we're going to get people to come back to NoLimits. Okay, it's I don't have any immediate answer, but it needs brainstorming, because if you already, if you're measuring it or you're observing it, you need to fix that. So eventually, you've got the sale. And there's lots we can talk about with sales. I have a background experience in sales and as a sales manager. And a lot of people are frightened of sales. They don't want to mention the word sales. They shy away from it. But without sales, you don't have a business. Without sales, you have a cash flow issue. And a lot of this is, a lot of people try and do things on the cheap and do things without calling a professional in. And I can understand that. But you've got to get the sales in before you run out of money. or will. And that's why most businesses fail. So the sale, as far as I'm concerned, and there's lots of things that we can have a seminar in itself, a webinar all about sales. And there's lots of good sales professionals out on the No Limit platform. But for sales, it's easy for me. All I've got is I've got to understand where somebody is, not only where they think they are, but through good questions, where they are right now and where they'd like to get to, where they think they want to get to, where I know that they could get to, or where I feel they could get to. In other words, where they are now, where they'd like to be, and what is it that stopped them. And my conversations with anybody will always be to really explore where somebody is in their business, what they're doing, how they're working the 5 pillars, etc., and where they want to get to. How much business do they want? That you've got to know those 2 things before you can know, and also what's been stopping them, before you can know how your solution can take them by the hand, overcome the objections or the challenges they've had, and safely take them to where they want to be. And that is all sales is. And instead, we get people in your face telling us why we've got a problem and how they're going to fix it before they've even asked us any questions. And I think that is a key thing about sales. When you're not too sure of sales, when you need the sales now, your tendency is to pitch and sell to people. And I think that's dangerous. It's not complete.
I think I was just going to say on that point, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, is I've been reading quite a few books at the moment on sales, and it's questions. L&P's questions are the answers. If you find you're doing more talking as a salesperson, then you've lost it. And it's exactly the same as a coach. It's
easily done. When I first started as a sales rep, I used to call on 15 salons a day, and I was so nervous. I was trying to memorize what there was in these hair care products, whether it's a perm or the technicalities of this. And I was so nervous. I'm sure I didn't want them to interrupt me because there might be a question I couldn't answer. Then I realized somebody said, well, if you don't have the answer to that, just admit it and say, look, I'll get back to you on that answer. And I'd remember to get back. But one of the tips that I found that helped me in my career was that because I didn't know, I was naturally interested and curious. And I remember one particular bleach product, and I sold it to a number of my regular customers, but the majority of people didn't buy it. And when I went back the following month, I said, how do you get on with the bleach? And the person would say, loved it. But instead of thinking, I've got another sale, I would say, what did you love about it? What in particular, notice the words, did you like about it? And they would come back and say, well, it did this and that. And I think, hang on, my sales manager and marketing team didn't tell me about that. And then when I went to other people, I'd say, you remember I talked about the bleach last month? Well, a number of people that have tried it have been telling me this about it. And I would repeat some of these stories about how they'd used it and the results they'd got. And slowly but surely, I built sales for that particular product. And I did that.
And I think that just, excuse me, that just highlights the first point you talked about, audience, knowing your audience. How the heck are you going to know your audience unless you ask questions exactly like what you've said there? And that all comes to marketing. And it reminds me of Marcus Sheridan that you and I have both seen, and They Ask You Answer, a brilliant book for those who haven't read it. But isn't it that? It's asking questions and answering the questions, not you telling what you think they need to know.
And the trouble is, sometimes our ego gets in the way and we think we know our audience.
Oh, yeah.
I know best, I'm a consultant, this or whatever. Just ask the questions and listen to the answers. And actually, sometimes they'll give an answer and it won't be the real root of the problem. So I think there's 3 stages. One is just talking. The next is asking questions, surface level. But the third section, and that's when you've got real confidence, is going deeper. Because there's some people you probably can't help. You are the wrong fit. Again, it's knowing that audience. And if that's the case, just say that it's not the right fit. Because you're working with the right people you can help, and your reputation will be intact. And in those cases, if you've got referral partners, you can know who best can serve that particular client. So The fourth area is client retention. And if you know clients to begin with, then you won't need to worry about that too much. And most people don't. They get a sale, they go back to the audience, they get a routine going, they get a sales pipeline going, and the clients can look after themselves. But here is where the gold is dug. It's where the gold is mined. And that is where you think to yourself, how can I wow that client after I've delivered the service? How can I just turn it so that they say, wow, I didn't expect that? It's like when you get birthday cards. I don't get as many nowadays, but you get a birthday card, you expect it. But if you suddenly get a thank you card in the middle of the year for something you've forgotten about. So that wow bit is so important. How many times, what you could do is after you've delivered the service, how did we do? I was talking to somebody recently, so I'm frightened of asking that question just in case they have a problem. I said, wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to fix it? How did we do? It's quite easy.
But on that point, we're so scared of asking it. And I was in a masterclass with Marcus Sheridan recently, and one of the questions he talked to us about answering is a client coming is, you've got quite a few bad reviews on Google. How do you handle that? And the first thing, sort of being honest and saying, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Oh, yeah, now I can actually learn about it. Thanks very much, and doing it that way. So seeing it as something positive as opposed to cowering away from it. Yeah, I agree 100%. Paul, I'm just so conscious of the time, and the time just runs away with us.
Well, we're only on number 4 so far.
So no. So if we move on to number 5 and start wrapping up, can you believe it?
Well, I think time is only a constraint we put on ourselves. So I can leave the networking bit out at the end, but and I probably will. We'll perhaps do that for another time. But keep it on the client retention. Remember, the client has bought into you. If you deliver great service, that person, do you think that's the only thing they ever need? Do you think you should stay in touch with that particular client so that you can find out how they're progressing in whatever area? Should you show an interest? Well, of course you should, because very often we pigeonhole people into having the service we think that we've just delivered, but there could be other services that other people might want. Online, people call it an upsell. I'm not going to call it that. I'm just going to say stay in touch with your clients, because I'll guarantee your competitors are chasing those clients. And so that is a key area. And those clients, if they're approached in the right way, and you need the database, you need a system that will take people and keep you on track. If you don't have a database, I don't know how people do it. Those people are the perfect people to introduce you to the 5th pillar, and that's your referrals. Or as I prefer to call it, qualified introductions to who? To the audience that you clearly know who they are. Because in those instances, you just don't say anybody or somebody, you're laser targeted. These are the people I help best. People like you, we've had this result, but there's sort of other people I'd like to be introduced to. People have got this as a challenge, this is a challenge. People may have said that, people have none have done that. If you know anybody like that, I'd love an introduction to, especially, and then you get very specific. And I think the beauty I've found with B&I across any of the other network is that they have the complete package. They have the discipline that business owners need when they're on their own. They have the structure, they have the training, and it's all focused on those qualified introductions. And people talk a lot of nonsense when they say that B&I doesn't work, etc. And I've got nothing to do with B&I anymore, but they are still, if you're serious about your networking, they're the best organization, bar none. You see, a lot of people, when they first start in business, have little knowledge of marketing, limited resource, so they think the answer is a website and networking. And yes, visibility, networking, letting people know. I'm continually posting stuff, and I have done for over 12 months, videos and photographs on Facebook. I'm getting lots of inquiries. That business is growing. And so, yes, you do need to network. But a lot of people don't fully understand networking, and they don't understand how to turn the net. Everybody's there to sell, or to, in many cases, to collaborate, but they don't have a structure for their networking. B&I has a structure, and it's something I've taught well over 1,000 business owners. And maybe that could be a subject for me on a future category. One last thing. So there's the 5 pillars, and anybody in business, I'll tell you, if you get those right and joined up into a system, you'll grow your business. But most people don't. Most people have gaps. It's where they leak business. They'll talk to people who want the initial business. They'll give people the idea and they never stay in touch. And somebody else gets the business. The seed that you've planted, you don't pick that seed up. So what would I concentrate on? And then you can begin to wrap up. Don't concentrate on likes. Content is important, but it needs to be adding value. And there's got to be a mixture of that. Gary Vaynerchuk's got a great book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. Jab, jab, jab is give, 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 and the right hook is ask. You want to get that balance. You don't want to keep sell, sell, sell. People will back away. But if you're giving really good stuff, really showing your competence, really showing your expertise, and then having a call to action, asking for something, asking, let's meet up for a call, because you want to get people into a pipeline. Call it a marketing journey, a customer journey, call it a sales pipeline. I don't care what you call, but this is it. And I think Brad Sugars does it brilliantly. You've got to track the people that you connect with. You've got to get them to put their hand up to say that, to show some interest. It's easier that way. They've got a curiosity and interest. So you want to move them into a conversation. And in that conversation, and that could be a Zoom call. In my case, I love those. It could be, and anybody that's watching that, if they want to reach out to me on the platform and talk about their business, I'm always happy to do that. I'm always fascinated by that. But the call, whether it's a phone call, a meeting over a coffee, it's a conversation to ascertain, to qualify that person. Do they have an issue? Is that issue needs to be fixed now? And am I the person capable of doing that? And if you're measuring that, then you're collecting some sort of decision, and then you're staying in touch. And most people are measuring likes, and instead they should say, how many people did I get in front of this week? How many people did I get in front of last week? How many times did I present my unique expertise? Start measuring that and you'll see where your issues are.
Paul, I could carry on all day listening to you and chatting, and I think this is such a huge topic. And I think it's probably, as you say, one of the most important things for a business owner. A coach of mine asked me and said, Duncan, what type of business have you got? This is a couple of years ago. And I said, it's daft. What's he doing asking me that? I said, a coaching business. He says, no, you don't. You have a marketing business that happens to do coaching. And I think that sort of summarizes the importance of it. Paul, thank you very, very much. I think Paul has suggested everybody, and I listened to this. What are we thinking of doing on a sort of fortnightly to start off, Paul? Maybe you want to talk us about bringing your marketing crew thing into NoLimits quickly?
Well, at the start of lockdown, I was actually going to do it live, but lockdown put end to that, and took me a few weeks to realize that everybody's going online. And for well over 2 years, every week, a really group of very talented people with startup businesses, people that are growing their business, we all met online, and it wasn't like networking meetings you go to. There was no pitching allowed. It was just to have conversations about marketing, and it involved a lot more to and fro, etc. And we'd feature people, and it worked out very, very successfully. That, and there was no charge to that initially, and then we had a membership, and that worked very well. And I would like to bring that over onto No Limits. I'd like to set up at the right time a crew meeting where we get together those that are interested in marketing and we talk about marketing. So rather than an interview, it would be a roundtable discussion. And I've always found that the creatives always found it very, very helpful. But also a lot of marketing people find it helpful. And I welcome that. I'm not in competition. I'm actually more interested now in growing the importance of video in marketing. And that's really where I get a lot of enjoyment and I'm learning. So I would say that if somebody's got a marketing skill, it's something that I'd love to talk with them about, getting them involved in this, because if you've got 3 or 4 marketing people from different disciplines, they're going to add a bit like an agency, if you like, but without the cost and the drama, etc. But I think it'd be nice through the help of Karen to set that up.
And I think it's a wonderful idea. And Karen, this is what the essence of our community is about. So if you're not a marketing professional, you're just a business owner, and this marketing scares you, you can't get a better forum to come in and just sit and listen to these people doing it. So watch this space, people. We're definitely going to start something like that. Paul, thanks very much for your time this morning. I think, as always, enlightening. And yeah, all the best for your future, and really, really continue to play the part you do on No Limits. Thanks very much, Paul.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Paul. And that marketing crew meeting is a yes. So that's going to happen in this network. I'm totally sure this platform is perfect for that idea.
In the next 24 hours, we'll try and set that up. We'll look to set that up.
Definitely, yes. Thank you so much,
Good.
Paul. Thank you, Duncan.
Mark.
Have both a
Thank you.
really nice day.
Have a wonderful day. I'm now to go and get in front of some prospects. But Paul, thanks very much for this. It's really great.
Good.
A lot of things I can learn. All right, guys. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.